And I believe we are live. Everyone, hello and welcome. And this is our first episode of the season together for a new set of regulations. And I have two fantastic gentlemen here with me today, and we have a lot to unpack. First of all, what a start of a season. And first, before we start even talking about that, let me do some introduction. First, we have the vet tech legend himself, Craig Scarborough. And we have with us today for the first time, Nasser Al Rashid, a Saudi F1 engineer. And I would say the first Saudi F1 engineer worked with McLaren, and he's a two-time world champion. So don't forget that, guys. And yeah, welcome, guys. How you doing?
Really good, yeah. Need some sleep now. I was up at the crack of dawn to watch the race, but yeah, great start to the season, I think.
Nasser, how you feeling?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for the introduction, Ahmed. Really excited to be part of MENA Grand Prix finally. I know Ahmed has been contacting me for over a year now, but I always promised him that I'll be popping up in some of his episodes, and here we are.
Well, I mean, let's just start and get with it. We finally got to see these cars racing. We finally have uh, an idea about what we should expect, or who knows, maybe not. What are your first thoughts, Craig? Let's start with you.
Um, I really enjoyed the whole weekend. Obviously, I've got a slightly different angle than maybe most people because it's seeing the cars and the technology being proven on track is what I watch motor racing for, particularly Formula One. So I really enjoyed that. But as a fan, because at the end of the day, all of us are just fans talking about the sport that we love. I thought the cars looked fantastic. I know that we had certain parts of the track where they were slow, but finally we have cars that look like they're quite difficult to handle. There was lots of power oversteer. There were lots of lockups, lots of cars jumping and skirting around, and we saw lots of overtaking in the race. It's one of these things. Everyone seems to be complaining, but it's like, well, this is what we've been asking for forever. Cars that aren't easy to drive, that are just on rails all the time, and cars that can overtake. So first impressions is, as the first race, which was a tough one at Melbourne, as we were saying the other week, I enjoyed it, and I'm optimistic for the rest of the season.
Nasser, your thoughts?
No, I mean, I second Craig. I mean, it was worth it for us in Saudi to, stay up until 9 a.m. KSA time and watch the race. Well, it helps because, sleeping time
Ramadan
is
sleeping time
different in
is
Ramadan.
everything is just
Is
upside down.
flipped exactly. But honestly, I've enjoyed the race. I mean, I feel like we've seen everything from the start. When I compare it to how the Australian Grand Prix back in 2025, it was more settled. You could predict, those cars are all mature. They've been there, in an era, very established. The drivers know how to, handle these cars, even the rookies back then. And you could actually see that, all right, the quali showed up. Lando was, leading the race mostly, if I remember, the whole race in Australia, but it was a really different view this year where you had the cat and mouse maneuver between Charles Leclerc and Russell, and I don't remember seeing that many overtakes in a race, especially from the start, mid, and mostly towards the end. So it's really, really interesting. I think be having almost six cars out of the race and in Australia as well is also interesting to see. There is a lot to handle going up the season and for the teams to and the drivers to understand their cars better.
I feel like F1 has gone in, in reverse. And what I mean by that is, so previous gen and the gen before that, you watch qualifying because probably that's the most interesting part of the weekend, because you already know the set in order and who's fastest and who's not, and who's projected in the new regulation to be the fastest. And once we get the qualifying, because we just want to see those cars, like, wheels off, somebody who's on the diet and that's their cheat meal day off, and they just go all loose, no care in the world about managing tires. You just send it that car in every corner, PU up to the max, and that's it. Race day, there's a PU management, tire management, and everyone just settles in and DRS overtake, and we're done. This season, however, qualifying just looked like, oh my god, we're in for a very bad season. This is not F1. And now, qualifying might not be enjoyable, but then we got to the race. I think we probably watched the most. Well, people might hate me for this, but everyone has an opinion. Probably the most enjoyable Australian Grand Prix since ever. Because what do I mean by that? Because teams have no idea how to manage these batteries. So everyone from lap one, no care in the world for tires, just push in and battery or push to overtake or overtake mode, and everyone just depleting their energy and taking the position and losing it and taking it back. And so there was no tire management in the whole thing. The whole first sequence, if it wasn't for the virtual safety car, I think that Ferrari-Mercedes fight would have gone to the end. Craig, what do you think?
I think the race was kind of a foregone conclusion that Mercedes were having the advantage, and I think that was quite clear. I mean, Ferrari's race starts were exactly what we were kind of expecting. Absolutely flying past everyone else. And I think also qualifying showed us that Mercedes have really got something once they took all those sandbags out that they were running in testing. And once they've got their engine to be allowed to run all the way through to the summer break. I mean, I think a lot of people were kind of overblowing some of the strategy blunders by Ferrari. I don't really see that it was a big issue. But I think the thing that really shows us is that, Ferrari are up there. Melbourne is a particular type of circuit, seemed to suit the way the Mercedes were able to recover energy in ways that other people weren't. I think the other big thing in the race that kind of almost, I noticed in the commentary, almost forgotten, was Verstappen coming from the back of the grid. And then chasing, last year's world championship all the way through to the end of the race. There's sort of lots of sub stories that were going on in that race that I thought were fascinating, and I just want to see another race now. I want to see, these cars get through another qualifying run and then into another race. It feels like it's, it needs to be next week, almost immediately. I just want to see more of it and understand more about what was going on.
Master, do you think Mercedes have the advantage, or Ferrari just maybe messed it up with the virtual safety car and they have the pace to compete with Mercedes?
No, I mean, honestly, you can't jump into, statements. It's fun to see, that drama going on. And as Craig said, we can't wait for the next race to see if really those performances keep, showing the same predictions or not. But from the Australian Grand Prix, it seems like things are really unpredictable. Which, as we've seen, Mercedes showed. I mean, Ahmed and I were exchanging some tweets on Twitter, and I was like, what a boring season ahead, because Mercedes are way off. But the race really surprised us all. And honestly, I don't see the strategy that Ferrari messed up on the strategy. I think it wasn't the main kind of factor here. I mean, speaking at McLaren, it's such a shame seeing Oscar at his home race to not start the race. Obviously, I was talking to Ahmed the other day. Earlier on the battery unit issues that Max Verstappen has faced during the quali. I think it's a very similar issue that Oscar faced during the pre-race lap, and it seems like we can dig deep into that, but it doesn't show, for me, it doesn't show a driver error at all.
See, that's the one thing I think might ruin this season for us, or could ruin a driver's season, or even ruins the morale of drivers how to approach these cars. Because yes, it did look like it did actually look like at first, whoa, Max doing a mistake, but then you look at it, you're like, no, that car was just straight and then it just went sideways, And it kind of reminded me similar to, I mean, these are not the same regulations, but reminded me of the Lewis lockup and spin in Spa last season at the bus stop chicane when the car just turned on him. And then I see that of Piastri in the installation lap, I believe. It just, the lap into the grid, and it's just like, that was the softest ride on the curb. And those cars ride that curve very hard in qualifying, in race, and no way something as soft as that is just going to make those rear ends just spin like that because of some high rev. And that high rev apparently could probably come from these battery situations. Now imagine you went from driving cars that you could have a mechanical lock, and now all of a sudden you have software issues. I don't know, you're dealing with an iPad at this point. So that's for me what I think could ruin racing at the moment. But there's one team I would love to talk about. I don't want to talk about anyone at the top right now because I think we kind of see the scene in a way. I want to talk about Audi. Have you expected this, Greg?
Audi were always very difficult because you have the existing Sauber team, so they're not a brand new team, and we've all seen Audi racing in every other category. Rallying back in the day, and then Formula E, World Endurance Championship. They're more than capable, and through testing, their first few tests were deeply troubled. But by the end of the second Bahrain test, they were running lots of laps, reasonable speeds. So I don't think we should be surprised that they were able to get points on their first finish because they've got all the right ingredients. I think we would have forgiven them if they'd had 2 DNFs. Both cars had retired. Unfortunately, Hulkenberg didn't even get going. But even in qualifying, that car is clearly bang in the middle of the midfield at the moment, and is showing up teams like Williams, for example, on performance. And that's only the first race. Now, first races are unusual in Formula One. For a driver or a team or a regulation, that you tend to sometimes have a unexpected boost in your first race, and then suddenly you get a dip while all of a sudden everything starts to go wrong, and then you kind of recover a little bit. So a bit early to maybe talk about where Audi are going to be going forwards over the first part of this season. But we can see already it's a very serious operation. Give them a few years, and I think it could be another Mercedes all over again, a team that are capable of dominating this sport.
I mean, I think there's a potential, but look, they have the right driver lineup, okay? But who knows? Again, everything I think at this point is possible. We've seen this happen before. And before I give the question to Nasser, we have here @hard.forex. Hey guys, hope you all doing well, and shout out to Nasser. We are so proud of you. We'd all love to hear some behind the scenes details from him, but we know he's under NDA, and I think you just answered that yourself. We can't get into that because Let's go, Nasser. Thoughts
Thank you.
on the Audi? What do you think?
Now, first of all, thanks for the shout out. But yeah, speaking on Audi, I mean, they've built an engine from scratch. Um,
Yeah.
and for them to really show promising results based on the recent race just tells us that they are a promising opponent. Um, I mean, I've been closely watching Portoletto last year. He had some, he has high potential as a driver, and I think shout out to Jonathan Waitley as well. I mean, from Red Bull to Sauber and now shifting to Audi, they've made a massive move, and it's really hard. I mean, compared to Cadillac coming in new, not shifting from a different engine and starting, all of these, new regulations. It's true. They're all, all teams have the same kind of chance, let's say, but given shifting from Sauber to a completely engine from scratch to Audi, and not only technicality wise, but commercially and all sorts of functions within the organization, it really affects it. I mean, I've been in a mature organization that has lasted on for 7 years under the leadership of Zach Brown and Andrea Stella, and they've really, established that culture and mindset within the company that led to their successes over the past years. And so it's really difficult to really, technically build up an engine from scratch and keep going in a new organization.
The other team that I want to mention would be Haas, with Oli Berman scoring their points of the first points of the season. So here's where I want to bring it back to you, Craig, because we spoke about this before, we spoke about this before the Bahrain testing. After we saw, couple of we didn't see anything. We basically just saw numbers from the Barcelona testing, which is like basic lap times, pretty much, which indicates to nothing. And I asked you, which team do you think, they probably should go back to school? And you said Haas. Now, I'm not saying that's because you said they're going to be the worst team. I think looking back at every regulation, Haas has a trend. And that trend is, at the start of a regulation, they're good. And like, let's say, for example, let's not go even to the furthest back regulation. Let's just go back to the regulation before 2022. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2022. Okay. So regulation before that, and then you have 2022. Haas started exactly how you'd expect a team that is in the midfield, and they were, having troubles here and there before the end of the past regulation, and then into a new regulation. This are good. Now, from there, we've noticed that the trajectory goes on a decline. Do you think we could see something different this time now with Toyota? Or is this, again, another repeat of Haas's past, trends?
Well, I mean, at this stage, we can't predict, but I mean, I get the feeling that we're looking at a very different Haas team this year. I mean, again, we spoke about this, as you say, before testing. Haas now under Komatsu's leadership rather than Gunther Steiner, very different people, both very technical, engineering-led people, but Komatsu definitely is, a different type of character and a different type of engineer to what Steiner was. And then you've got this relationship with Toyota, which has got, huge access to huge amounts of resources and experience and engineering intelligence. And I feel that this is the corner that Haas have been needing to turn for many years. again, I think I may have mentioned it when we spoke, is that I can remember when I sat down with Gunther Steiner at the Banbury office before their first season. It's like, at what point are you going to change from being a listed parts customer to being more of a constructor? And he couldn't really answer. And well, all the way up from 2016 through to last year, almost 10 years, they never made that change. And now I think we are seeing that they are a team. They made huge progress last year. You can see the car is very good this year. I mean, Behrman's performance in the race is, another one of those standouts. I think we need to maybe keep an eye on that as well. But I feel probably more confident about Haas now than I have done for many years. So I think this is a change, and a change for the better.
Nasser?
To be completely frank with you, I haven't been watching Haas that closely, maybe because they weren't a threat over the past years. But Olive Behrman, again, I think I put him with just near Portoletto, and I'm just excited to see what he comes up with this season.
I mean, yeah, he hasn't been giving it easy to Ocon, and he's been making Ocon's life a little bit, hard. Again, that's a talent, and there have been a lot of talks about how talented he is. Ocon, at some point of his career, he was in that position where he was a talented guy, and the guy next to him was, feeling threatened. I feel like Ocon now is in that situation, but given the current dynamic of Haas, I don't think they are gonna go with, all right, let's just throw Ocon out. He's not performing. They know Ocon has an experience, and there will be races where all he could do, that early days driver mistake, and then experience of someone like Ocon, as much as people say Ocon likes to crash, like crash into other drivers, and stuff like that. But still, there will be that experience where they'll be like, okay, lock in. We need this points, and he will be the driver for you to deliver that. I'm not saying Aldi is not capable of that, but I think Aldi still build in his personality as a driver. Build in that maturing. He's still maturing, and that will take some time. And you could tell, just look in the difference of 1 year, the overtake that Lindblad, who's we come into right now. The overtake Lindblad did on Behrman, and Behrman just let him go by and just switched back and took the position. So, like the difference between one race and 1 year in F1, how much it could help a driver gain as an experience. So, yeah, I think Haas are in the best position in terms of driver lineup. All they need is just to work on that development department, and they have everything set for them. You have a Ferrari engine that starts like Apollo 11 or SpaceX Falcon 9. It just rockets up. It launches. Actually, Ferrari engines launches, they remind me of fighter jets on the aircraft carrier when they just launch. Like you cannot explain that turbo how far. So you have an engine that can launch off the line quickly and put you ahead of other midfield teams. If you have the pace to stay ahead of them, you'll by ease just got rid of a lot of headache of doing overtakes and burning your tires, and just off the line, you're already like with the top 4, top 5, or just staying behind them. So yeah, let's see where Toyota takes them. Do you think we could see Toyota entering F1, the next regulation, as an engine manufacturer?
Yes, I think that's got to be what their roadmap is. Whether they choose to go down that route or not, I think it's too far off. But I think that they're putting their toe in the water, as we say, and just getting ready. And yeah, I think it would be good to see Toyota back in the sport. I think we missed them. I think their approach back during the their previous time in the 2000s was perhaps misdirected in how they approach Formula One. and they had various different approaches during their time. But yeah, I think they're the sort of company that we do need to see back in F1. And I think perhaps as a power unit supplier with a chassis partner could be a good way of getting that step in before they maybe find a way of organizing themselves to come in as a full constructor themselves.
Well, to you, Nasser, I have the question here. Mr. Arvid, Anand, Olof, Lindblad has probably delivered for us one of the most exciting rookie drivers races we've seen in some while. A lot of people will be like, oh yeah, what about this? What about that? No. This is a rookie in a midfield car, okay? This is not a rookie in a top team. This is a different situation. What do you make of what we've seen from him, not even holding back, going at Hajar at the start and even taking third position at some point of the race? The defending against Lewis and the defend. Oh, I mean, there was moments he was defending there, yeah. The defending against Max Verstappen, who he didn't there was like a no hold bar. Just, hey, you are a vet. You are a 4-time world champion. I'm trying to prove myself here. What did you make of him as a first impression?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say he reminded me of Kimi Antonelli back then when he started the 2025 season. But now when you compare him being in ball racing and Kimi being in a top tier Mercedes car, you really can't it's comparing apples to oranges here.
Yeah.
I mean, such a shocking in a positive way. I'm just how Red Bull work out, and Hajar, maybe not Max, but Hajar has to keep an eye for him if he want to keep his seat with the main Red Bull Oracle team.
We're gonna get to Hajar most definitely, but I need to put Mr. Craig here at a teeny tiny spot. Okay, bear with me for a second. Right, let me do this right, so I don't end up sharing my email details. Right, there we go. I think I'm doing this right. Yeah, I'm doing this right. Do you see this?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this is the work of a gentleman we know. I don't know who he is, but he does fantastic stuff. So, two things. One, it's a question inside two, right? So somebody here, one of our viewers, just asked a question saying, regarding the race, do you think the FIA is regretting now not taking an action against the combustion pressure advantage with Mercedes? I want you to talk about that and explain it to us, like from what you have just drawn here by yourself.
Okay, so I mean, this the background to the story is that the regulations changed this year, and there was a limit on the compression ratio, which is how much the piston compresses all of the charge inside each cylinder. There's a regulation. Last year was 18-to-1 compression ratio. This year it was supposed to be a 16-to-1, but they added some words to the regulations to say it's 16-to-1 at room temperature. Of course, Formula One car engines don't run at room temperature. They run at 130 degrees centigrade, and things can be shifted around. And Mercedes have found, so we understand, is a trick that allows it to be measured as 16-to-1 when it's cold, but when everything expands, there's a trick inside the cylinder head, maybe a couple of tricks that allow you to get, some people are suggesting, was 18-to-1 compression ratio. We don't know much of the facts about exactly how they do it and what the advantage is. And just before the season started, the FIA put forward a suggestion that when we come to the summer break, we'll change the regulations, and we will also test these engines when they're hot at 130 degrees, which in theory should prove a downturn in power for the Mercedes power units, because they're going to have to make a change to that engine to be legal. which then means, well, they get half a year of an advantage of this engine, which I personally don't agree with, but it's not my opinion. It's not the FIA's opinion. The FIA put this to all of the 11 teams, and they voted to accept this compromise agreement where Mercedes get their advantage all the way through to the summer. And then from the second half of the season, after the summer break, they will be having the same compression ratio as everyone else. So we can't say, is it the FIA, feeling they've made a mistake? I think certainly Mercedes were sandbagging through in testing. We were talking about this. There was lots of politics about exactly how you went testing, how you showed your hands. And it was obvious that, Mercedes did a much better job. But then, if you look at the performance of the different Mercedes customer teams over the Australian Grand Prix, the factory Mercedes teams did very, very well. The customer teams less so. I mean, even McLaren were, far down in qualifying, far down in the race. And then you go to their other customers, Alpine and Williams, which are, nowhere near the performance of the top two Merc teams. So I don't know how much of this is down to the power unit, and I think it depends whether you're a Mercedes fan or not. I think Mercedes have found a lot more in terms of energy management than combustion horsepower. So all of their advantage around Melbourne, which is quite a tricky circuit in a point of view of energy recovery, because there's very little braking and you're having to do a lot more energy recovery with part throttle and super clipping at full throttle. And it seems as though the Mercedes factory team had just got that much better sorted out than everybody else. Ferrari, who while they were very close to them on pace, were generating lap time from not particularly great energy management, but more from performance through the corners with the chassis. So I don't think what we saw in the Australian Grand Prix weekend as a total is purely down to that Mercedes engine and its compression ratio. It's a mixture of many other aspects of that power unit and the chassis and how the team like to operate it all. So I don't think the compression ratio reg that we're now living with is a particularly big talking point. I think we just need to move on and just accept that that was part of it. And we'll probably find lots of teams been doing lots of other clever things that other people would like to see banned as well as the season goes on.
Do you really think people are just going to move on? But fair play to Mercedes.
Fans on social media haven't moved on from things that happened to people decades ago.
Do not mention it. I thought you were going to mention a certain race, but please.
Oh no, I bypassed that one very carefully and thought further back in the distance. But I mean, some people will just say, "Oh, Mercedes cheats," just as people still say Ferrari get FIA special treatment. And there was a time when that may have been the case, but that was a long, long time ago. But people just like to come out with these very simple narratives to kind of back up their view of the world and in Formula One. And that's human nature. I think the compression ratio story got too much airtime over the winter when we didn't have much else to talk about. I just think it's been overblown in the importance that it actually has on the bare end of the season.
Nasser, I want to ask you this, and hold on, I have to think how I can ask you this. So, you're not in big doo-doo, right? Okay, so we've watched the race. So personally, please somebody remind me, because I remember the gaps were at some certain point, or there were a certain level to where things looked close, but obviously the VSC kind of helped expand those gaps and it was different. For example, Ferrari and Mercedes, all four cars were in the mix together, literally following each other all the way through. But the VSC, Mercedes pitted, Ferrari did not, and then they pitted. So then that's why we had that 10-second gap between Mercedes and Ferrari. George Russell and the closest Ferrari. But even with the 10-second, that gap remained the same. The shocking part for me was to see who's under the Ferraris. and it was the McLaren of Lando by 34 seconds behind and dropping. So, Nasser, do you think this is something to do with just still figuring out this regulation as a whole, or is it something to do with the engine? Or I know obviously there's few things you can say, but like I just mean like, what do you think could possibly have gone like, oh, there's something wrong with this and we should fix it?
Yeah, no, very good question. I mean, following up from Craig's, talk about the engine, we all know McLaren uses the same replicate
Yeah.
of Mercedes, so there is no kind of concerns about that. I mean, when you look at the reliability concerns on the car as well, they're all good. The I'd say, like looking at this, both cars really lack pace compared to the superiors Ferrari and Mercedes. So it can be a lot of things, to be honest. Like you can predict some answers, but it goes from the aerodynamics, the battery issue that Oscar has been struggling with, to the car, the driver's feeling on the car, the amount of comfort and I mean, even with the preseason testing and all of these are still not enough given the new cars for the drivers to kind of be familiar with. So, I mean, apart from that, and again, if Mercedes found a loophole in the regulations, so that other teams could do the same thing, right? It's part of the game to find loopholes and take them to your advantage.
I mean, I agree, but then again, the question will be remaining over here is that coming to summer break, and if Mercedes changes what it changes, and if there's a drop, like noticeable drop in performance, then the narrative is just gonna point toward, oh well, see, they were cheating. Now they're not fast anymore, you know. But part of me, I could be wrong. I am 50% of the time I'm wrong whenever I'm thinking something like this, because it's just me thinking from the top of my head. Part of me believes, just like Red Bull in the previous regulation, when everyone was like, oh, look, Red Bull have flexibility in the floor. Look, rise the carb, make the floor stiffer. And they've done that, and everyone just went backward, and Red Bull got faster. Every team, when they take a step into a regulation, or if they discover a gray area into a regulation, they've already thought about the next step. If I'm getting caught with this, what's my next step? If I'm getting caught with this, most of the times they pray that they're not caught, not because they cheated, because they believe, if this is gone, could be trouble for us. Like Red Bull in 2024, when the whole rear suspension axle thing and with the fluid for the braking system and all that kind of talk, that was gone and the car was different. They managed to make it faster through the course of the season and managed to win races after Miami, but still, it just, the car was no longer that superior car that just darts off into the distance with Max and nobody can catch him. So who knows? And this is again my opinion. Maybe Mercedes haven't even, I'm talking about the manufacturer team, haven't even shown the full scale of their engine power. This could be another 2014 all over again, where Toto is asking the team, hey, do not show the full capabilities of the engine, otherwise everyone's just going to protest and things is going to be changed on our engines. Keep it as is. I think that, and maybe even after changing the ratio when it comes to the combustion and the cylinder and everything could stay the same. But who knows? I could be wrong. The only disadvantage so far we see is that Mercedes turbo is not helping them recuperate enough energy for their launch and their starts. And well, we've saw that in Australia. And we move from there to talk about. Should we talk about McLaren? Keep the best for last. We keep the best for last. Okay, let's go to Red Bull, and I want to speak specifically about none about their drivers because I think both Max and Hajar have done to the best of their capability with what they have. I want to talk about Red Bull's engine because Hajar's engine blew up, and Max's engine, when he came right behind a McLaren car that was clearly struggling, he wasn't capable to even do the overtake. What do you think the issue was there for Red Bull for this race at least? Correct.
I think when you're talking about the Red Bull power unit, I think you've got two aspects you can look at it. First of all, is that, they've created, much like Audi have, their first ever complete power unit in F1. Now they've taken staff from Mercedes and from Honda, and there's been all sorts of people in the mix. But at the end of the day, you've still got to create the facility that designs, develops, and manufactures a complete power unit. And I think the fact that they are so competitive is fantastic because this is a huge project. It's ahead. It's keeping Red Bull in contention. Obviously, they had a difficult qualifying, as we saw, but Hajar got the qualifying done. We saw their performance through testing. We saw Max's fight back race. So I think on balance, you've got to think that the Red Bull powertrain's power unit is fantastic and has done a great job. Is it as good as the Mercedes power unit? Maybe not, as for what we've seen so far, but we haven't got a lot of data to base that on because of the nature of the Australian circuit and how you have to recover energy. But I think what we can say is that the Red Bull package, the chassis and its power unit, are in the fight for the top four for podiums for wins this year. I think that's fantastic. I think that's what we want to see: different teams and different drivers winning at different races, depending on the type of track or the weather or all the other variables that we've seen. So I've been impressed with everything I've seen on the Red Bull so far. Looking at the installation of that power unit, I don't know if NASA's had a chance to look at some of the sort of the under the skin photos of it. They've done a beautiful job with it. It's so neat and tidy. When you think of these current power units are really kind of complicated with pipes and tubes and things running everywhere. The Red Bull installation is super neat. So I think we will see them fighting and probably fighting even more competitively as the season goes on, as they start to develop their own power unit.
Nasser, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Here, I mean, they're competitive, and it's really kind of exciting this season to see multiple teams competing. I think we can't really jump into conclusions with Mercedes yet. You're talking about Hajar having the third place in quali instead of the reliability issues. He could have done a better performance. You're talking about Max, finishing last. Again, not a driver error. Could have been in the front and have competed for podium. So, I am convinced with Red Bull's new engine from scratch. And another thing, I mean, Max is just ruthless. I can't really be surprised anymore for him finishing sixth from last. He's done it multiple times with different cars, competing in and adjusting, being resilient in different settings apart from even Formula One. So yeah, it's really going to be exciting ahead.
Well, I think you guys know exactly what I'm about to talk about. And I'm about to talk about the vibration torture machine that is Aston Martin. Look, when you have the facility that you have the backing of PIF, Aramco, another company, Ma'adin, Adrian Newey. What kind of mindset? And I know I know a lot of people want to say Adrian Newey is at fault. Trust me, it's not Adrian. What kind of mentality was running through the administrative? And I think Lawrence Stroll should be also part of the problem and should be also, blamed for the current situation. Because what kind of mentality do you run with as an administrative company, and from the top all the way to your team principals? You've signed with Honda in 2023, and from 2023 until 2025 November, that's the first time you go and visit Honda and see what kind of engine they have built for you. What do you tell all these companies that are backing you?
It's, I mean, we've spoken about this, and the more we find out about the operation at Honda and the problems that they're having and the way that they've managed their time, a lot of people are kind of blaming Honda at this. But I feel that the blame sits as much with Aston Martin. I don't necessarily believe it's Stroll, because I don't think he really has involvement on the engineering level. I think Adrian Newey has been at Aston Martin now for a year, and Andy Cowell, who is an engine man from Mercedes, he was team principal through last year. Is both him and Newey are culpable in not managing Honda. And as we've said in the past, Honda are a really unusual partner. If you think about Formula One teams work with dozens, if not hundreds, of partners on the technical side. They'll be dealing with the spark plug supplier, with Brembo for brakes, with all these different companies, and you just have to treat your power unit supplier in the same way, especially someone as unusual as Honda. And the fact that, as you say, they didn't go out there until November. I mean, I think people need to be sacked for this, because this was wholly predictable. History has shown it's happened in the past. Adrian Newey has been a Honda partner himself with Red Bull. You should just know this stuff, and it's absurd that they've allowed themselves to get into this position. For all of the all the fact that this is a Honda problem, Aston should have been managing it from years ago, as you say. And it was clear that when Adrian Newey came on board and then became the team principal, which is not what he wanted to be, but he had to in order to get Andrew Cowell to take over the management of the Honda situation. I mean, it's unforgivable. But what I would say, and again, we talked about Toyota earlier on, and Lawrence Stroll, you can't come in and buy your way to success in Formula One. It's not just about buying the money, buying the partners and the parts and the big factory and the big names and getting all the great sponsors on board. You simply can't just get a wallet together and win in Formula One. It needs lots of things working, and at the moment it's not working at Aston Martin, and that's worrying. But I guess the test now will be is how do they recover from this situation and move forwards? A bit like Red Bull did back in the Renault days, when the Renault power unit just turned out in 2014 to be absolutely atrocious, and they produce updates and they wouldn't work. So yeah, there's lots of precedents for this, and Aston Martin have really got to dig themselves out of it. Potentially they've bought themselves some, or there is time now with the potential of the two Middle Eastern races being cancelled, that they can start to sort this problem out and recover, because I don't doubt that Aston Martin chassis is able to qualify at the front of the midfield. We saw that when Alonso just put that one lap in qualifying. I know it was a few seconds off, but that was the fastest run that they'd done at any point in the weekend.
Nasser, as somebody who was inside an operation, and obviously you have no clue what's happening inside another operation. What goes through your mind seeing that and be like, oh my god, what's going on here? Like what does it go through your head when you see that?
Oh God, a lot, a lot. I mean, first of all, Aston Martin being a naming partner with Aramco, a Saudi representative, there is the cash. It holds a dear place in my heart to see an F1 team being successful, representing my country for sure. Having that green color too just fits all perfectly. Um, Talking about really how Aston Martin, um, as you mentioned, it's been almost 3 years. All of the F1 teams have had the knowledge about the new regulations and the new structure going ahead, way ahead of time. And they've got the cash. They remind me of PSG in football.
Oh,
Looking at PSG in football, they've tried so many years to reach out the Champions League final. After what, 10 to 15 years, they nailed it finally with not the best lineup. I don't want to talk deep, go deep into that, but it's a very similar scenario here. And being part of an organization such as McLaren, where I've seen the instant reminder of the new regulations in every tiny bit in our work, especially in the engineering departments within Formula One. Whatever project you work on, there's always this new regulations are coming up since 2023. So when I joined, every minute detail that we do is based on the new regulations. The Mercedes engine collaboration with McLaren has been, monitored week in, week out with our engineers since 2023. So it's just very, kind of common sense to other especially top tier Formula One teams. So it's really shocking looking at Aston Martin, and it's really, the pain is how would they really recover from that?
Let me tell you something, and this is obviously I'm just giving my opinion, and I'll say things that you guys may be not able to say. And when we talk about being serious, like, look, you as a businessman, Lawrence, you've done the right things. You brought the best available engineer currently for probably the last 20 years in F1. You've got a great driver experience. And yeah, the sponsors and all of that. Yeah, good. Your number one issue starts with one driver on your driver lineup. And that's for me alone to tell me you're not serious. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say because, well, I think as obvious as that, what are you going to do about Lance Stroll? When are you going to tell your son, hey, listen, we have a good project at WEC. You never know. Could work for you. Go there. Give it a shot. Or just say you're tired of F1 and you want to try something new and go to WEC. Who knows, maybe you win there and, well, there you go. You have your gold, and then come and sit with me in the board and become, a businessman. Do what Latifi did. Because you can't tell me, oh yeah, it's forced. He has his decent moments, but F1 is not about you have your decent moments. You either deliver 100% every weekend. I know the current situation at the team, it has nothing to do with the drivers. None of them. But I'm talking about when you go back and you just, rewind the clock from the beginning of this operation, when you brought Sebastian Vettel. And I know Sebastian, he did not have a great year first time when he drove with Aston Martin, but the very next season, he's been scoring most of your points. Sebastian Vettel decided to call it a day, kick up Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso jumps in a car that looked very fast and probably was capable to win one or two races when it just started that season.
Yeah.
Where is Lance Stroll? When one driver gets all your podiums and nearly wins a race or two, where's the other? And the only thing people kept playing and PRing is that audio of Fernando Alonso, I will not attack in Baku. Well, what are we doing here? So this is my issue again here. So you're head of operation, you are trying to build something, but you're just going around one obvious issue that you know in the world of F1 it does not work. You need a consistent driver. Better drivers have been dropped off, and you have somebody like Daniel Ricciardo. We've seen him deliver some of the best races there is, and there was like a potential of seeing an F1 champion in him get dropped from McLaren for not even producing, despite his big name and his attributes and everything. Got dropped. We've seen him go to Red Bull, get a chance in the V Carb, and got one of the saddest goodbyes I've ever seen in F1. And Sebastian Vettel, I would not say Sebastian was probably thinking he would be next, because there's no way Aston Martin would do such a thing. But again, there are so many examples of drivers who were producing results, and just because they had a drop, everyone started questioning. Lewis Hamilton himself, the greatest statistic of all time, everyone was questioning last season, will he even remain next season? And that's a 7-time world champion with all his accolades and the greatest, and yet was questioned. Now, Lawrence, what do you do about that one? Let's take the small problems first. What do you do about that first tiny problem right there? Because I'd rather have two good drivers than have one. So you start with that, then I'll say, okay, they are being serious. This Honda engine issue happened to the best teams. It happened to McLaren before them. It happened to other teams who, like, let's say McLaren with Mercedes in 23, when the engine was fast, but then it would just blow up at some point in any race. But every team had that issue. Ferrari, for example, they had the engine issues and just blowing up on them. But the serious talk starts not with, as you mentioned, with the number of sponsors you have and all these big names, because I'm sure if you gave these companies that are around, and I think a lot of people don't understand the magnitude of companies that are around Aramco. Yes, they want to invest in Aston Martin, but if those same bubble went to invest in another team, let's say even they invested in Audi or invested in Cadillac, those teams would shoot up. Because why? From the very start, they're taking that operation serious. You're doing it as a karting experience, as if he's still 6 and he's in karting. So yeah, that's my 2 point on the whole Aston Martin situation. And we can blame Andy Carroll for not going to Honda for the past 3 years to check, which is baffling to me that somebody did not even think, I don't know, the private pilot of Lawrence Stroll did not even think, hey guys, let's go to Japan, check on that engine, None of them thought about it until November 2025. That for me as well baffling, that how come you as the head of operation, Lawrence, did not even think to be like, guys, has any of you went to check on that? Then what are we doing? Let's take a plane and go. Instead of just vacationing in Switzerland and expect those results to just come your way because other people are working and you're paying them to do. So yeah, this is the perfect example in a business in the world. If you start your own company and your own business, and if you think the money is coming your way and you can just go vacation and it's going to work, this is what you're going to get. But yeah, we move from the roast session of the torture vibration car, and we go to talk about. I think we're gonna make this our last point before we just move it to China. Let's talk about Cadillac. Well, hold on, we haven't talking about. So we've
Williams.
spoken Williams. Oh yeah, I have Williams and Alpine to speak about. I mean, Cadillac is in early stage of the season. They are new in this operation. What they've done so far is fantastic because from what I've heard from people that work with Cadillac right now, when they pulled up to Spain, they said this is a disaster. We might not even finish the first two races. But for them to do what it did so far, they should be they should be happy to celebrate for doing what so far they did, and this should be expected. Williams, Alpine, new regulation, good engine under them, and that. What do you think, Mr. Craig?
Well, I mean, Williams have been a massive disappointment. There's been so much talk when James Vowles took the leadership of the team over, and all the talk through last year that this was going to be we're going to give up this year and focus on 2026, and 2026 comes and Williams, they're ahead of the Cadillacs, and that's that's what they've got to sort of talk about. Both the drivers' races, they were with each other for a big chunk of the race, really made no impression whatsoever. Yeah, I mean, as much as we talk about people should be talking about what's going on at Aston Martin, I think questions need to be asked equally at Williams. What on earth is going on? I don't understand why that team where they are, why the car looks the way it does when it's got the best power unit out there, and looking at the number of sponsor logos on the side of the car, the money's coming into Williams as well. It's I can't find an explanation for it. Because you would have thought someone like James Vowles would have got it sorted out, but they seem to be in the same situation they've been in for a number of years now, where they seem to have some money, like they used to have the Martini sponsorship and various other big sponsorship deals, but don't seem to be able to do anything with the money. So I'm at a loss. Alpine, meanwhile, I didn't expect much from them, looking at the car and their testing performance, but I thought Gasly, who is one of the undersung stars of Formula One, perhaps, had a great race performance. Colapinto seems to constantly get himself into trouble. I mean, I've not watched Drive to Survive, but apparently there's some rather awkward moments with him and Flavio. And I'd imagine after the race yesterday or after the weekend, Flavio's going to be having more words with Colapinto. I don't think Colapinto has kind of brought himself up to the level that we were expecting after his, quite impressive debut. We were talking about, Lindblad and debuts. Colapinto looked like he was going to be great. I think the reality of his performances, and again, bearing in mind where Alpine have been, his performances have been disappointing. And I think we've got fireworks coming between Flavio Colapinto and whoever is in the wings for a seat later this year. But on the plus side, that some of the promise they had in testing and with the new car was shown through in that race with Gasly.
No, from my side, I'd say Alpine. Yeah, I mean, Alpine, the only highlight for me is the reaction time for being there. The reaction time was surreal. That was my main highlight. But apart from that, I really since last year can't really expect much from Alpine. They've been an underdog for a while now, but surprisingly, Williams, I agree that there is a question of a similar question to Aston Martin being late in the preseason and revealing the car and etc. sets them up for sensitive expectations going ahead. They've got them, experienced drivers, Carlos Sainz and Albon. I mean, you've got the driver's seat. It's I think it's more on the management side, similarly to Aston Martin. Maybe I didn't want to, we'll talk forever on Aston Martin, I bet, but it's really you can't winning in Formula One. Well, there is money, supported into it, of course, but you can't really buy wins. And I think, looking back at my time at McLaren and the organization structure that lasted for 7 years, it wasn't all of a sudden. It's really about cutting politics, building that no blame culture within the organization, having a strong leadership that solves their own problems in-house, dealing with the media efficiently, comms being very strict, let alone, I don't want to speak much, but let alone having much politics within Aston Martin, having your son driving for the team, obviously will put a lot of pressure and higher expectations onwards, but I think it's all about the culture within.
Well, from there, we're going to move to our final segment, and this is mostly about, just go wild. Next race is up. It's China, so I will need from you three things. With the current situation with this reg that we've seen, what can we expect in China? And who do you think is probably mostly favorable to win in there? And who could be the surprise of the weekend?
Ooh, okay. Looking ahead to China, China's got those enormous straights. It's one of the circuits I've been to quite frequently. It's just vast. There are some braking zones there, but the braking zones, in contrast to the very long straights, means that it's going to be another energy management race, very similar to Melbourne in some respects. Although you probably couldn't imagine two more different looking circuits. That means for me, what to expect. Expect Mercedes to have the dominant edge again. But I think the surprise will be how much teams will have developed from Australia to China. You will find that some teams have learned so much from that first weekend of racing that, they'll be changing the software, they'll be working in the sim, they'll be finding different ways of recovering and deploying energy around a lap. And they'll be applying that. And you'll find, much like you do in other categories, particularly like Formula E, if someone works out a great energy strategy, then you can literally go from the back of the grid to the front of the grid. My surprise, I think, will be that we'll see Red Bull very much in effect at the race. I think it's looking like it will probably be a Mercedes win, and then it will probably be Ferrari and Red Bull fighting out in between the Mercedes at various points, in qualifying and in the race. But definitely Red Bull up there, but Mercedes slam dunk for a win, I'd say.
All right, Nasser.
Yeah, I think I have similar predictions here. Mercedes dominating for the next race, since there is not enough time for other teams to catch up, obviously. The surprise of the week, I'd say Hajar. I think if he's got the most, the reliability concerns neglected for the next race, I think he'll show a proper performance. I think also Oscar. I mean, we never know if he was part of that starting lane. Of course, there is a lot for McLaren to go back in their debriefs to discuss, especially when it comes to battery management, as Greg mentioned. But I mean, if one thing McLaren taught me while working there is being optimistic. So I think they'll show up next race.
All right, and for me, just to feed my illusion. Well, not for illusion. I've feed my belief and my hopium. Um, I think Ferrari is going to be in the mix, and we might see a Ferrari driver win. Uh, this, yeah, this is my delusion right now eating me. Like, part of me tells me, because just I've seen some numbers on Australia, and that sector two, Mercedes just pulls like about 2 tenths just in sector two alone. Now, like, good lord, what is this going to be look like in circuits with long straights? But Ferrari was quicker everywhere when it comes to cornering, and they had the best stability for the car, to just throw it in the corner, and that's one thing China has more than Melbourne, I think. But just that one long straight or those two long straights is where Mercedes is just gonna be like, right, just mess it up everywhere and cruise. And who knows? I think tire management will be finally shown for us. We're gonna see tire management for the first time maybe in China now, because that track eats the great tires. So maybe, I believe, maybe just, but it's not gonna be like by a margin, but it's gonna be like very close, a Ferrari car to win, and we could see those four again up against each other. We can see a Ferrari winning.
Maybe the sprint could be Ferrari's opportunity, like it was last year.
Yeah, who knows? And the second one, oh my God, it's a sprint weekend. Oh Lord. Hi. Okay. So, and the surprise. Well, you know what? Since it's sprint weekend, I think one of the midfield drivers is gonna get, a podium position in sprint. So that's what I'm gonna go with.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Realistic.
Yeah, that's my prediction right there. And that midfield driver is going to be Lando Norris. I'm kidding. But I mean the current situation with the team. Yeah. But yeah. But for here, I'd love to thank you both for coming along and chatting. Thank you, Craig, for staying this late with us. Me and Nasser, we have a lot of eating to do before we start fasting again.
I'm starving, I'm telling you.
Yeah, same here. And I would love to chat with you again, guys, after Chinese Grand Prix. I would love to do this. And to everyone who's been listening here, thank you for jumping along and for this. I know this has been like an hour of torture for you guys, but I'm kidding. But thank you very much for being here. And last thing I want to say before I go, look, guys, there are other things more important. I've been watching. I know most of you guys watch me from Twitter and everything, and some of you that I follow and everyone I see, there are more important things than just F1 and our part of the world. We really don't care if F1 is held or not this season, because again, there are more important things than F1, and I think you guys know what I'm trying to say here. People comes first and sport later. So, and that's the mindset everyone is having here. Nobody has a worry if this is going to happen or not. So, yeah, overall, let's always remember at the end of the day, this small bubble that we sit to watch, this tiny circle of sport that we're watching, we do it just because, it's fun, it's unique, and very few handful of people in the world watches it and practice it. So we are grateful to be part of this circle, and we shouldn't let it make us forget who we are in real life, and remember that there are far much better things in life than just F1, or make F1 your whole personality, or supporting one driver, one team your whole life. So to that, I bid you everyone a good night, and thank you very much for jumping with us here, and ciao.